So that was incredibly stressful. Because at the time, I don't think I fully understood just how depressed you were.
Hey Blossoms! So before we get into today's video, I just wanted to do another thank you to my mom for being willing to do this video. I also just wanted to tell you guys that I think that it's easy to kind of place blame on people for the way that you are and the way that you're raised, and it's harder to create a space to hear the other person's side and have empathy for the things that went on as you were a child. And so, as I always say, be comfortable doing the hard thing. I feel like this was really hard for me. My mom ended up telling me a lot of things I didn't know, and a lot of things that really healed the version of me that I was in 2017 through probably 2021. I didn't know that she felt that way. Yeah, and just also be aware that a lot of the video is kind of chopped up because of course we talked about some personal things that I felt like we should keep between us. I really hope this video encourages you to break those generational bondages and really have the conversations, have the deep, meaningful conversations that you need to have to heal yourself. All right, so let's get into it. Hey Blossoms! So welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lauren. I create lifestyle and wellness content. Today I'm here with my mommy, and we are leaning into more of the wellness side of my channel today. So I was kind of inspired by this from some of my previous videos, and I've just been trying to do more videos about wellness and healing. And last time I was here in Orlando with my grandpa, I felt like I was finally old enough to ask him like some questions that I had been kind of thinking about, but you know, you never really want to ask. So now I'm here with my mom, and I figured that while we're kind of taking down my hair, I will ask her some questions. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely stay tuned. All right guys, so we are taking down my hair at the same time, but I told my mom if she wants to like stop with the hair to think about the question, she definitely can. So the first question is, what was your favorite characteristic about yourself growing up, or just something you love about yourself?
Let me see. My favorite characteristic about myself growing up. I don't think, honestly, I ever thought about that. Like, I think when I was growing up, I was just too in it.
Okay.
But looking back, a theme that I think is still very true now about me is resilience. And realizing that, you know, life, it doesn't always turn out exactly how you plan it to.
What are some like things that you can remember from high school or college that you had to like show resilience?
Well, you know, I was an athlete, and I was an okay athlete, right?
Didn't you get a scholarship to college?
Well, no. Okay, so I walked on the track team, but then over time built up to having a full ride at the end. So big disappointments were like when you think the love of your life is the love of your life.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, or not performing as well as you want to in like a big time pressure situation. So that sort of thing.
Thinking back too to like the way that the household was with Grammy and Dada, how would you describe like the way that you were raised?
I would say it was pretty strict. I would say there was a lot of things we didn't and don't talk about. Kind of, I won't say seen and not heard, but you definitely never talked back. You definitely, you know, what Dad said, that was it. It wasn't incredibly like lovey-dovey loving, but looking back, I never wanted for anything. I had exactly what I needed, and
yeah. And I know Dad was kind of strict. Do you think you had that same relationship with Grammy too? Like she kind of followed like his parenting style?
I do, but she was definitely not as strict. I think I was, it's weird, I was much closer to her younger. But then as I started to work, because we ended up working at the same company, me and Dad worked at the same company, so then I got to see him in a professional setting. I got to learn more about him. You know, like, you don't know everything about your parents, right? But then when you have an opportunity to work with them and their co-workers talk about them, you start to see them in a different light. Stuff that you have to go through as you get older, you start to see, okay, now this is why he or she pushed me to do XYZ. You know what I mean? I just gained such a greater appreciation as I got older. I would say.
And I didn't even notice this until one time you had pointed it out, like the way Dad shows his love. Like, my grandpa, he never says I love you, and I didn't realize it. Like, I'm just going along saying it, and I'm never literally ever hearing it back. And then one day he said it, and my mom was like, wow, he must really like you. And since then, I've been more vigilant of how he shows his love. And I guess I want to ask from my point of view, how do you think he shows his love?
Well, I'm a grown woman, and whenever I come visit, I pay for nothing. We sit and we talk about. He's very present.
Definitely.
When we talk, and he asks about how things are going. He doesn't overparent now, like he doesn't. But he gives his opinion. But very much still gives me space to be me, and respects my decisions.
But no, I started noticing, you know, like when I come up here, he'll offer me gas money. He definitely will tell you, like, he's not going to sugarcoat anything if you're doing it. But I think that the love is there. And I realized too, when the way that Grammy would love me made me never even miss how, like, his lovey-dovey affection, because she was so lovey-dovey with me that
they were a good balance.
You
gotta understand too, grew up at a different time. You know, so much pressure for men to be, you know, the provider, and they were so young when they had me. You know, they were 19 and 20 when I was born, so there was a lot of pressure.
Like you said, my grandpa didn't have his father in the house, but his mom raised him. So I wanted to know, like, about your relationship with your grandparents, so my great-grandparents.
So my grandparents all died very, what I would consider young now that I'm in my 50s, and I think it's young. We had a really good relationship. We never lived in the same city as grandparents, and so I would always tell my cousins that I was the favorite, because I would swoop in town and I'd get to stay for several weeks at a time. And it was always love. You know, grandparents, it's a different type of thing when to have the love of a grandparent. Now, I had a Grandpa Otis. He was technically like a step-grandfather, but really he was all I knew until I met my real grandfather on my mom's side. And then I met him, but we were never really close. So my Grandpa Otis he was all I knew. And I remember sitting with him, and he would give me coffee when I wasn't supposed to have coffee. I was a little kid, so that's what I remember. My dad's mom, she was around, and I was fortunate enough to spend lots of time with her. I just remember one time she was gonna come visit me when we lived in Des Moines. You were young, a little kid. And I was gonna be late picking her up, and she just said, well, Shell, just forget it. And I'm like, I'm still coming, I'm just gonna be late. And so that was my first, like, okay, I see where Dad gets it. Like, if you're not on time, you are actually so late.
I was telling my mom yesterday that I do have memories of my great-grandma Ida, and going to like a small apartment where she lived. I remember cleaning out that apartment too, I feel like.
Yeah, when she passed,
Yeah.
Our mother on my mom's side had this recipe for these dinner rolls that no one in the family can recreate, but I...
To this day?
Yeah, but if I close my eyes, I can remember the smell and the taste of them.
Yeah.
And I've tried so many different recipes to see if I could recreate it, and I haven't been able to.
Yeah.
And then Grandma Ida, I remember, you know, her making cabbage and cornbread when I would come visit her in college. And she would eat her cabbage, if it was greens or cabbage, she'd eat them with her fingers in the cornbread. And I used to think that was
just
so
scoop
crazy.
it up?
Yeah, she'd just scoop and eat.
Okay, so I was gonna ask you, what is like your funniest memory, like when you were a new parent? Is there any like hilarious moments?
So you were a new kid, like you were early. And so I remember I hadn't had a haircut in a long time, and it was gonna be like, I was gonna go get this haircut, and we get to the shop, and I was breastfeeding, and you know, anybody knows when you breastfeed, the number 2 is quite runny, and there's a lot of it. And
of the kid?
You decided to have a blowout.
Now, when I said tell me something funny, did you think on my channel this was the story again?
But you decided that this was the day that you're gonna let everything come out.
Yeah. And
you did, and in the bathroom it said, do not put any paper towels down the toilet. Well, I panicked. And so I get you cleaned up, I panic, but I definitely flush a ton of paper towels down that toilet.
How long did you breastfeed?
You were, I probably, not long enough, probably, I stopped when you got your first tooth. So you were born in August, and probably by February, but I also was new in my job and had to go back to work, and back then the breast pumps were like carrying a boombox.
No way.
Yeah, it was humongous, and I was renting it, and so it
You renting it?
Yeah, I rented it from the hospital, which that was nice. But now they're super small now.
Yeah, I think you just put them in your shirt. I love this story. We'll act like I've never heard it before. So tell me about the day that I was born.
What happened was you came 6 weeks early, and my water broke in the middle of the night. Just drove myself to the doctor, to the hospital. I get in there, and the hospital realizes that you are 6 weeks early, and they cannot accommodate. If something was wrong with you, they wouldn't have been able to accommodate the baby that was that premature. So then they put us on a helicopter.
We was on a helicopter!
And I got a little irritated with them, and so they gave me something to calm me down.
Why were you irritated?
Because you were so early, you hadn't come yet. Why would you start to come now? Why would you think this was going to be the day? Doctor, went to medical school, blah, blah, blah.
Just stupid medical school. Like, what does he even know?
What do you actually know?
Right.
I did, again, something I wasn't supposed to do. I went to the restroom, but
Lady,
I couldn't.
If you wanted me to be a toilet baby, that's all you had to say.
Mommy. The doctor came in all nonchalant. And I know this isn't how it happened, but it felt like this is how it happened. Like he was coming in, come on, Miss Williams, I just checked you. Like he's putting the gloves on and they're snapping. Yeah. He sits in his chair and he rolls over to me, and I'm in the stirrups, and he's like, oh, there's a baby. And he says that, and then you come out. Like,
just like that?
Just like that.
No pain or nothing? Lady, I just did you right.
You were 4 pounds, 5 ounces.
Oh, that's probably
so you were very tiny, small. And you were thin.
Good thing he came right away. I was just going to pop right down.
Well, I probably could have scooted up on the thing and done something like that to get you. Yeah. And the crazy part is they get you, they're cleaning you up, and I'm waiting to hear you cry or do something. And your Grammy walks in eating French fries. Like what's all the commotion? It's like, like, oh, so you stopped to get some food.
Of course, that's so on brand for literally all of us. It was just me and you. Nobody was there
yet.
Yeah,
it was just me and you and 12/28.
Yeah. Best day of everyone's life, 8/28/98 at 12/28. And my mom was 28 years old.
I was 28. I'm sure there are a ton of things that I could have done better, but you do the best you can at the time. When I was at my job.
Yeah, when you're at your job and you worked 20 years at that job. What do you wish like someone would have told you about corporate America, or what was like good advice that you got along the way?
There were a lot of things. So like where I worked initially, the company was predominantly white and male. The director at the time later became our CEO. He told me one time, he said, listen, you need to really give some thought to what you want to do here. There's lots of possibilities, but ask for what you want and make sure it is what you want, because you know, you may get it and you don't want to regret it. So be clear about what your priorities are and what you want.
Never feel like, I don't know, like you said, it was predominantly male. Did it ever feel like you couldn't, like you had hit a limit?
I don't think so. I was never, and maybe that's, I don't know if that's a lack of ambition, or I was very comfortable where I was because it felt like I got there at a time when there were so many new opportunities in my field. So I would get opportunities to work in this area and opportunities to work in that area, and I slowly started to climb.
You were climbing. I guess it would be slow. To me, it felt fast. Because every time you were always traveling, they were always sending you to some country.
We relocated a couple times.
Literally. So I can't believe you said lack of ambition, because we literally moved to South Africa. My parents got divorced when I was in like 8th grade or so. And right before I graduated 8th grade is when my mom got this, I almost said scholarship, the promotion or whatever to go to South Africa. And instead of taking me out of 8th grade, my parents decided like I would stay home with my dad and then move after 8th grade to South Africa with my mom. And so making that decision, like what was that like? Do you think it was to kind of ease some of Dad's anxieties about me leaving?
The decision to let you stay was less about him, more about making sure you were stable, making sure I got there and I was stable before you came over. So I left in February. You joined in May, in late May, after school was out. And I really wanted to make sure, you know, because when I first got there, I was living in temporary housing. It was not necessarily to ease his anxiety. It was mainly about me making sure I was stable, settled, and I knew you were in a safe, good place.
Yeah, I do want to know, like, I'm sure in all unhealthy or unhappy relationships, right, it gets to a point where you know you want to leave, and I think it gets kind of like, you know, you want to save face, maybe don't want to be the bad guy in anybody else's story, don't know how to leave, whatever. So just wondering, like, what gave you the courage to kind of get out of that marriage, and what do you think even like maybe kept you in it while you were still unhappy?
And I'm gonna be honest, what allowed me to leave was finances. I always had my own money. I was very fortunate and still had the ability to, you know, to do things, you know. And so when I made the decision to leave, a lot of times I think what keeps people, and maybe this is might be coming from a point of privilege, I don't know, but a lot of times people stay because of the money. They don't have the ability to leave.
What type of feedback do you feel like you got from Grandma and Dada, your friends?
My family was very supportive. My friends very supportive. I think it was clear to a lot of people that was not the right relationship for me. As a result, when it became clear that I couldn't keep living that way.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that I could go, but I think to those around me, it was clear that I wasn't me anymore in that relationship.
Definitely.
And so when I made the decision to leave, it was kind of like, you know, a little bit of sigh of relief. Okay, what do you need? How can we help you? But then I was still operating under this idea that I had to be hyper independent.
Yep.
But when I told everybody, I already had a foot out the door.
Yeah.
And, you know,
nobody's decision, like any negative reaction wasn't going to stop you.
Right. I have a really good friend that says if it costs me my peace, it's too expensive, right? I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time, but that's what I was doing. From the day I left was all about, I wish you well. You need to find the right person for you. You know, I'm just not that person.
I think I kind of know what was your most probably disappointing moment as far as me as a child.
What is it?
I mean, I think that that era of like me throwing the parties, you finding out I was smoking, I think that was like a really, looking back, I mean, that's personally my most disappointing.
So
era.
let me get this straight. So you're admitting that the parties
someone had parties, under an alias in our home. I could admit.
That I won't say disappointed, Lauren. What I will say is that was definitely the most challenging part.
Yeah.
We'd come back from South Africa where you had kind of this amazing experience.
Yeah.
And then you there was some rebellion in there. I wouldn't say disappointed, Sweet Pea. What I would say is that was the most challenging because you were at an age, as everybody is, where you think you know everything, you think you're getting over, and you forget that. And I will give your dad this. This was a good saying. He said, "I've been your age, you have not been mine."
And I used to cringe. I used to be so mad, and now I finally get that.
Yeah, like so.
If we're gonna skip past disappointments, what about like scariest moments?
Well, are we going?
I know what it probably is, but we can go ahead.
A scariest moment was after Gabe passed away. You know, your depression showed up, and I don't know, depression might have always been there in some degree or fashion, but it really came to the forefront. And there was that period when there was some self-harm happening, and anyway, I had to put you in that place for, I don't know, 7 days, 10 days, how long you stayed there.
Yeah. So, like, I remember I was in a therapy session.
You were in a therapy session. You must have said something that triggered sort of, in the state of Illinois, if you start talking about self-harm, then the therapist is required by the state to report it. So that was incredibly stressful because at the time, I don't think I fully understood just how depressed you were. That was definitely the scariest because I don't know if I ever told you this, but, for several years after that, anytime you would call, I'm gauging your voice. I'm judging based on your voice if this is going to be something where I got to hop on a flight, get in a car, or, come rescue. And so for a long time, it took me a long time to get over that. I'm just now to the point where I can hear, like, you can call me and the cloud of doom isn't, like, floating over us. Right at the time, it was just so new, for me growing up. It was like, suck that shit up and keep going. Like, even some of the language I was using, like when Lauren graduated high school, it was, high school was your option. You are now a guest. You're getting ready to fly bird, be free. I'm an empty nester. What? But I think at the same time, it may have put pressure on her to think in the midst of losing Gabe, because she goes to college, loses Gabe that following year, tries to go back to school. I think there was a pressure. I think in her back of her mind, she thought, well, I can't go home because mom has set this. And me, I went to college at 18. I came back for visits, but I never moved back in with my parents. And so I think it set this expectation that was unfair. So I had to look at the language I was using and really say, you're always welcome. You know, even though she was always welcome, I had to reassure her that, hey, if this means you gotta come home, you just gotta come home. There's nothing more important than that.
Yeah, I think that did put those unconscious pressures of like, okay, well, people go to school, like, and I told you, even with the master's degree, like, both of you guys have masters, so like, this is nothing to me, like, go do it. And it's just now that I'm starting to really internalize when you guys are saying like, no, this is a big deal, or I finally was able to internalize like, no, you can come home, because that was hard. Like, I can't believe I went back to school after that, like, and I was like so depressed, and nobody knows what to say. And I remember, like you said before, you had that like change of mindset, and you told me like, I've never been depressed, and I was like, you've never been depressed?
I've been sad.
Yeah.
I've been, like down about stuff, but
yeah.
I've never had
like the
long cloud. I've never had that. After Grammy passed, I won't say I was depressed after Grammy passed, but I had anxiety. I like couldn't relate to anxiety, but for a long time, after she passed, anybody who meant anything to me, if they were gone, I would start to replay these scenarios of death.
Yeah.
I had that for a couple. Yeah. That lasted a while, but I've never had depression.
Yeah. That's anxiety that I get, and now you can relate, which I think was something that was so sad for me when Gabe died, was like, nobody could understand until something happened to them, and then everyone would always come back to me and be like, oh, I know what you're saying, like, you know how, like, that doomsday thing is real. Like, I'll never forget where I was when his dad called me, and those moments of like, I'll just see everyone's that happens to me even now still, just like playing it out in my head, like, how will they let me know, things like that.
I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that day. And I don't know if I ever told you.
Yeah.
You called me and you were worried about him.
Yeah.
Maybe about 20 minutes later, you called me screaming.
Yeah.
And then we dropped everything, and it felt like it took forever to get to you.
Yeah.
Even though you were maybe 15 minutes away, it felt like it took forever.
I think I'll do eventually another video on that, because I still haven't talked to my channel about my journey through grief. But since we're on it, this will be the last question, because I don't feel like I've ever seen you grieve your friend Andrew, and I know he was like your best friend. And so what, like, I know emotions were different for us to show, so like, what do you think kept you from crying in front of me, and like, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think, and it was a joke, we blame everything on our parents, but
yeah. But seriously, we were not an emotional family. That was just, and my dad was not military, nothing like that, but you just didn't really get emotional. You didn't get that opportunity. It just wasn't what you did. Yeah.
A situation happened, you handle it, you move forward. But so when Andrew passed, childhood friend, when he passed, I did break down privately, but I did not want to scare you. I don't know, I felt like that was a kind of a private thing.
Okay.
Looking back, I definitely should have been more vulnerable with you, because I think some of the things, some of our disagreements were always about and not disagreements, but me encouraging you. And I would always say, look, I don't know where I went wrong if I made you think this was easy, but life was never easy.
Because I feel like, like you did a lot of things privately, and so then I just thought, like, you just graced through it. Like, you literally do so much, and I'm like, did she ever struggle? Because I never saw that.
All the time, but I felt like as a parent, my job was to shield you from that. You know, that just wasn't what you did. You loved your kid, you provided for your kid, you discipline your kid, you do all that stuff, but you didn't necessarily show weakness in front of your kid. And maybe it's a Generation X thing, I don't know. But, but that was that. You know.
So, thank you for doing this video with me, Mommy.
You're welcome.
We would have never done this years ago.
I know, right?
I think we should do a part 2. We're gonna try to convince my grandpa to come in.
That won't happen.
It'll never happen. I'm just joking. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.